these regulations, you would not be for fracking in the current state?
I'm not against it without the regulation. I believe there should be regulations on it.
Did you have a response to the regulation question?
I think that it should be up to the localities. I think that allows for the maximum amount of power to be disseminated amongst local people who are being directly affected by it. So I would say it should be up to localities, counties, municipalities.
If we are investing so much time in researching this because it's possibly harmful, why instead aren't we, or rather, do you think it would be more beneficial to be using all of our time, money, and energy to be researching other energy sources? Or are we going to be doing that eventually, but we're just buying ourselves time with this? What's stopping us from just cutting out the middleman?
I wonder the same thing.
I would say that if you look at the history of solar panels and wind turbines, it just isn't as efficient in any way. It's way too much money. It costs way too much money to install a solar panel, and how much energy you get from it isn't worth it.
However, when going back to the 50 years worth of energy, that might seem like a very long amount of time for you, but if you ever plan on having children or have friends that have children, they won't be able to see the end of that.
Right.
So in that kind of time frame, does that change your opinion about how long that is, how long we have till this energy source eventually runs up?
Well, yes, but like you said, it was buying time, which it almost has to do. Like I said, our solar panels are not efficient enough. They're still very expensive. Wind turbines are too big. They take up too much space, and it's just the only real alternate energy source that actually works that well is hydroelectric power. That's the only one I look at that's even plausible. So the only way, so we do need like a middleman almost to build our knowledge of solar panels enough so that we can start using them. Like they're not good enough yet. So it's unreasonable to think that we can use just clean energy.
Isn't it just as irresponsible to use something that produces a minimal amount of energy as it is to use something that produces a high amount of energy at a high risk?
So I didn't catch that.
You have low, on the one hand, you have a low amount of energy, but with a low risk. However, you have fracking with a higher amount of risk, but it has more energy that's produced.
Right.
What is, are you saying that it's more important to get more energy than it is to risk the welfare of people of this country, this state?
Well, there really haven't been that many cases of the methane gas leaks. When you really look at it, it's really not that much considering how often we do it. And while it is a problem for the people that it does happen to, for the most part, it doesn't happen. So it's, as I see, it's really not that high of a risk right now. We need to obviously study it more, like we said, but to say that we can use alternate energies efficiently right now, it can't hold true. And we also don't have the money to invest in it, and we're also broke. We're spending, borrowing 40 cents of every dollar we spend. So we can't just keep investing in things that aren't yielding results.
Did you have any response to that?
I don't have this.
Jackson.
All right, so both of you guys have said that you believe that if fracking is to be regulated, it should be regulated at the local or state level. But say something were to happen, say, we were to find out down the road that this is really bad for the environment, and we had to have some kind of cleanup. Cleanup of toxic waste sites usually costs hundreds of billions of dollars. How are we going to pay for that if it's regulated at the, like most local levels? Because as a state, we're already broke, and the local governments certainly don't have hundreds of millions of dollars at their disposal to invest in cleanup efforts. So, with a lack of federal oversight, how could we possibly pay to clean any of the possible toxic sites that could arise at these wells?
Well, I'd expect that if we did find out down the road that it was actually horrendous for the environment, that there would be lawsuits against the companies that are doing it. So they would fund probably a big part of that, and obviously the federal government would have to help in paying for the cleanup effort as well. There's the states that do that. Things like FEMA could help.
I would say that later on down the road, if it turns into a great environmental disaster, that the company should take care of that. I see no reason why that should come out of a public fund, that if this fracking causes large-scale environmental disasters, that anyone else but these companies should be doing that.
Yes. We've been talking about preventative measures a lot as well, and also addressed at the House of Representatives meeting. His name, Andrew Heath, the president of Growing Greener, which is a toxic waste removal and dealing with company. Under Ed Rendell's reign, I don't know what the word is, sorry. He was paying for the Going Greener 2, and like he was giving state subsidies toward it in order so that they could stay above water long enough to keep preserving the land in order to do this. But if Corbett has ceased doing this, he has stopped paying for the Growing Greener 2 funds and like trying to pay that off so that they can be above water. And they, if it isn't that county thing, off of what Jackson just said, they won't be able to keep themselves alive long enough to deal with that if it does go down the line. So do you think that we need to start resurrecting these companies, not resurrecting, but helping them stay alive now as opposed to worrying about it later? So should we start getting ready for these developments or these problems that we may have down the line now?
I would say absolutely. As far as I know, Growing Greener isn't a company. I think that it's a program funded by the government, and that's why its funds are drying up, is because it's one of the programs being hacked right now. And so I would say absolutely that we need to take preventive measures. There's, especially at this time, environmental issues are coming to light, more so. And so something like this, when the popularity of gas drilling is increasing, we obviously need programs such as that to keep some force of monitoring going on. So absolutely we need to take that.
And would that include raising the taxes or the ceiling cost of how much they can charge at each site?
Oh, absolutely.
Would you agree with that as well, even if it deterred some of the companies?
Oh yeah, $40,000 near what it should be.
Okay.
And it should be taxed as well. So if it does scare them away, then someone else will bill it. There's plenty more companies that are looking to make money. So
what about? So you do think that some of those funds should be going to the preventative measures and companies that have,
we always have to,
organizations such as Growing Greeners?
Yeah, we should always prepare for the worst. So we should. Those kind of programs should be funded. I actually liked your idea of a company. Maybe it wasn't your idea, but how you said, I think it'd be better if it was a company that was trying to do that was working on preventing toxic waste from entering our waters and things like that. Companies that would do cleanup efforts and things like that.
Right. I mean, I was going to say, it's not preventing it from going in the water. It's already in the water.
They're cleaning it out. Okay. So yeah.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, again on the issue of regulation, given the obvious financial and economical advantages that having large companies like this coming into a small county or a small community would have, how would you propose to mitigate what to me seems to be, or what could possibly be a large conflict of interest? You have local politicians, their constituents are clamoring for jobs. I mean, how do we know that having it at that level without larger oversight is going to produce the best result environmentally?
I would say that by those county officials, their elections are always, there's not that many people in the county, so for them to have any judgment or anything the public disagrees with, they'll be out of office in 4 years.
Well, and that's definitely true, but my concern is that the effects of the drilling is going to be late, and it's not going to be something that we're going to see, in their term. It's not going to be something that we're going to see until after, those people are long gone politically. But yeah, I don't see how.
Any other questions? I was curious about like ecotourism, how all these little and what would normally be a very beautiful landscape, and is that taking do the jobs that are supposedly created outweigh the jobs that get destroyed through ecotourism?
Well, actually, most of the, or actually all of the natural gas drilling sites, when they originally built it, there was about a structure about 150 feet high, made of steel that they used for the drilling. But then after their holes are drilled, they actually take them down. They're temporary. And they put up ones that aren't that tall. I believe they're not more than like 2 or 3 stories high, so you wouldn't even see them over an average tree line. So it's not really killing our landscape. It's more just if you happen to walk upon it, you'll see it. But for the most part, they're blocked off pretty well.
I would say that it's absolutely devastating the landscape. Those counties where ecotourism was growing before the introduction of gas drilling, those industries have been shown to completely been dismantled by this. The reasoning for that is because in order to drill a well, it takes hundreds of truck trips along these roads. And so with all of this traffic, all of the noise, all of the effects of that, it pretty much disintegrates the ability for an area to remain viable in that sense. It destroys the landscape.
Also on that, those trips that are going on, any bridges that they go over, any land that they go over, any soil that is being affected by that, won't have money, or those counties where that's going on in, if they don't have drill sites in it, but they have to drive through that county, that county's not going to have that much money to pay for it. Based off of Corbett's initially proposed bill, which isn't looking that good to most of the other legislators, but still, it wouldn't provide for that either. So I agree with you in that our risks greatly outweigh what we're talking about here. And also, there were a couple of cases, because we don't have all that evidence, there were a couple of cases where the actual landscape, due to the chemicals, like animals and livestock were dying. Those trees that you said were protecting the view, trees were dying as well. So, I mean, the surrounding region, you wouldn't have a landscape to prevent you from seeing it either.
Well, I thought you meant more of like you're standing back and looking like for hundreds of miles around. Okay, I see your point there.
Right.
There are a few reported cases of these trucks that carry the fracking fluid have actually had the valves open in the back of their trucks, and they leak it all over the road. Now, as I understand it, the drivers of the trucks are separate from the companies that actually do the fracking. So how do we regulate the drivers that are carrying around this highly toxic fluid?
Well, I think the best way to do that would be to
Hold them accountable at least.
hold them accountable, and I guess you'd have to have a company or someone oversight the transportation as well. But you can't expect those companies to be in the trucking business as well. It's not economically suitable for them to have two businesses like that.
I would still argue that the companies are responsible for that. While they're not the ones actually driving these trucks, they're still the ones that are benefiting from this kind of transportation. So I would still tend to believe that companies bear some responsibility for accidents like that, because because while they might not be personally responsible for that, they're still the ones who are benefiting from it.
This is a statement, not a question. I'm sorry. This is just kind of a sigh of relief. They're talking about, or like it's almost definite that the cost of fines for disobeying any of these laws that are already in place have been doubled for these companies, and anybody who, fails to follow one of these laws or any of the regulations, it's already been doubled before. I mean, like now it's already being doubled. So that's hooray.
Yeah, that's important.
So, nice, we don't agree on that.
And back to the questions.
Where else in the world is there hydraulic fracking, and has there been case studies done on any of these regions?
I'm not really aware of the where else fracking is done. I know it's obviously New York, West Virginia, Ohio, I believe Texas. They've done a little bit of it, and actually in the Green River Rock Formation, I think it's called. It's in Colorado and some of the surrounding areas. They use the Marcellus for the oil. It's the same thing, same process there.
So there are wells all across the U.S., not in any state or anything, but they are pretty widespread within the U.S. They're looking to Europe and India now for new wells. However, there are some in England. I don't know how widespread it is, but it is in different localities. It's just not as popular.
If this was a safe process, do you think that, or let me rephrase that. New York has banned fracking, and if this was a safe process, do you think that they would have not banned it? Like, why would they have any reason to ban fracking if it wasn't 100% safe? Or safe as you so feel, enough to continue doing it?
Well, New York, obviously what's best for New York isn't what's best for Pennsylvania, and I'm not really sure why New York placed a ban, or I thought it was a moratorium, but it's okay. If they did ban it, there may not have been enough federal regulation on their site. They didn't regulate it enough themselves. So maybe it was worse because they didn't do too good a job of keeping track of it. But I'm not really sure why they banned it.
I think that New York and Pennsylvania are just culturally different, and that's why they have a moratorium in New York rather than Pennsylvania. I really don't know why Pennsylvania isn't instituting a moratorium, in my personal opinion. So,
One question. Do you think we need a regulation before we drill? Or think that should be required, or this course of action?
Well, I guess we can buy a regulation before, like where they can drill.
Where they can drill, taxes, safety procedures, liability issues.
Well, yeah, there should be all of that included in regulation. You can't just regulate one part of it, that would be very efficient. But you should regulate, like before, it should be approved spot. Shouldn't be near any major rivers or streams or anything like that. And yeah, you can go by that kind of stuff. So you need regulations.
yeah, I would say that in an ideal world, we would take precautions before continuing with action, but in the situation we have now, absolutely regulation before action.
Earlier, when you were talking about the clean energy, you said that solar and wind power weren't working very well, but that hydroelectric power is proven to work the best out of all of them, and like is really useful. And am I quoting you properly?
Yeah, hydroelectric power. Obviously, the Hoover Dam produces a lot of electricity.
And it works.
Works like a charm.
What if we put all the water that we're shooting into the earth toward hydroelectric power?
Yeah, that'd be fine, but I mean, it's just there aren't that many major waterways where we can really use it like we do at the Hoover Dam and Niagara Falls and other happy places.
True.
There aren't just humongous rivers everywhere.
The reason that that's not to as the new frontier of energy is because it already has been. There are thousands and thousands of hydraulic dams in the U.S., hydroelectric dams in the U.S. The reason that it's not being looked to for more is because in every nook and cranny that you can put a hydroelectric dam, there already is one.
I'll just let one more question. One more. I don't know the situation in Pennsylvania, but in some cases, companies are not forced to reveal what goes into the fluid. Why would that be, in your opinion? What is the valid reason, if there is a valid reason, for their ability to keep whatever they're injecting? I'm not saying it's in every case. Obviously, there are ones that are forced to reveal what they're shooting. Why is it that they are able to keep it secretive or to themselves rather than publicly announcing what is in the fluids?
Well, I know I personally believe that they should have to reveal what's in there, but I know why they don't do it is they claim it's a trade secret. So they say if we do this, then the other companies are going to know what chemicals are best to use. But in theory, I mean, I don't think that's a very good argument because it's pretty important we know what's going on. But that is the reason they claim trade secrets. So I don't necessarily agree with that.
I would say that that's just another example of corporate control coming over government and the control of the citizens. There's absolutely, I don't see any logical argument as to why the industry shouldn't be revealing what chemicals they're using. Perhaps it is a trade secret, but I don't see why that really matters at all. As far as what chemicals they're putting into the water of the populace, I don't see what excuse would come in front of that. So I really don't see why there would be any reason.
Just if I didn't know, correct me if I'm wrong, from what I understand with the way that trade secrets work, they have the trade secret number and it is linked to a database which has the MSDS associated with it. Is that the only excuse they have? Is it a trade secret or is there?
Through what I read, that's the only thing I found that they said that was their main reason, was just trade secrets. But like I said, I don't believe it's a good excuse.
I've also heard that depending on what's needed for a particular drill site, the amounts of the chemicals used will change. However, that is still really no excuse, especially in regards to the trade secrets, is because if you state what chemicals are in it without stating how much or in what quantities, it really is pretty meaningless to other companies. And so I really don't know how any of those explanations really pan out.
I don't really have a question, but I could answer that. It's not so much trade secret that's protecting what they put into it. Trade secret only protects how they, because like, I'm not a chemist, but you can't just throw a whole bunch of chemicals in a pot. There's like mixing components, timing, saturation, things like that. That's protected under trade secret. What the federal government does obligate them hands down to do is not only track, but measure, and they keep a very close eye on what the end product is. So I mean, I don't know how much conspiracy is really there. They're still obligated to report the outcomes, and that report has to be made every 3 to 5 months.
No.
If this is to go as it's going, which we already see, I mean, it's already being tapped into, this is already a real problem. Would you have Pennsylvania turn into what I already mentioned before, the booming town where there's a lot of people, a lot of traffic in and out, international companies in and out, you know, a lot of focus on us and all of that, and lots of people, population rise, running out of our resources? Would you have all this for the end product of naturally cleaner energy, which we discussed earlier isn't really that much cleaner, but would you have all that occur in order for this to happen and for this to continue?
I would. In addition to when you talk about how it's just going to boom, like everyone's going to, like when someone starts drilling somewhere, every business around it makes money, from the pizza place down the street to the hotels that they stay in or hotels that they stay in. I know personally, my uncle runs a motel in Williamsport, and he said he's had so many customers that the people are living there and frackers or do one of the processes that surround it. So it's creating jobs everywhere. Like, it's not just that people are getting jobs and leaving the state and not spending any of their money. They spend the money in the state. So it's really just going to keep building Pennsylvania towns up.
Do you think it's going to end up like other places that have developed into what they are now? You know, like the strip mall type thing. You know, the quickie stop on the corner, the shop well or whatever it was, where the old man down the street used to run it. You know, he wasn't doing it well enough, so they had to build a giant there. I mean, is that okay? I mean, is that still Pennsylvanians? Are we looking out for the Pennsylvanians who are here now, or the people who are going to become Pennsylvanians because of the oil?
Well, we're looking out for really both of them, as I look at it. Regular Pennsylvanians are still going to have jobs. They're not going to. People aren't going to have a preference over hiring non-Pennsylvanians over regular Pennsylvanians. They just pick whoever they think is best for the job. I would hope so in most cases. And like I said, with the giants and the mom and pop stores kind of running out, that could prevent it. That could pose a problem down the road. But in reality, the towns won't grow. I don't believe they're going to. Like, every single town won't grow by that much that it would cause, you know, a Walmart to have to be built every 10 miles.
And we did talk about was it 15 miles to have one of these depots?
15 miles.
Right. Well, you can actually use compressed natural gas for your cars. I know our university does it. So I guess that's probably what he's talking about when it comes to the pumps and stuff like that. It's probably, he hopes the exploration will be the cars running on it.
Where would you have this go?
Well, my response to that would be if we could look to other fossil fuel industries in Pennsylvania for evidence as to what would happen. If you look at the coal mining towns now, 50 years ago they were pretty booming. Now they're pretty devastated. I would say that if we look at the evidence, that would give us clues as to what will happen in the future.
Any other questions? All right, and if there's nothing else to be said, we are through with the debate.